What is up, guys? Stu here. So last week, Kingsman: The Golden Circle was released in cinemas, a film which I've been very excited about for a very long time. So I sat myself on a seat and watched it with my eyeballs. Let's talk about that shit. So, Kingsman: The Golden Circle, if you've not heard about this one, is a sequel to Kingsman: The Secret Service, a spy action flick based on a graphic novel of the same title that was released in 2015. I absolutely fucking adored that film. So obviously I was very excited for this one. We've got a lot of the returning cast coming back for it. We've also got Matthew Vaughn returning to direct, which is the first time he's actually done a sequel to any of his films, which gave me some faith there because there's got to be a reason he's breaking that rule now. So it can't be bad, can it? But I sat down to watch it and I've got to be honest, I was really disappointed with this one. It kills me to say it, but it didn't do much for me. And now to break my heart even more, I've got to explain to you why it didn't do a lot for me. So let's do this. So as I said, we've got a lot of returning characters from the first one, as well as a new cast mixed in a bunch. And to be honest, one of the positives of the film is that I think the actors and actresses are doing really solid work throughout. I can't really fault the performances here. Taron Egerton is still doing really great work. I think he's fantastic as Eggsy. He's probably my favourite part of the films. He was better in the first one, but he still does solid work here, so I can't really fault his performance on that side of things. But also Colin Firth returns. And Colin Firth is great to watch anyway, regardless of what he's doing on screen. It's Colin Firth, so you got that going for your film already. But Mark Strong is equally as fantastic here as well, and I really enjoyed that he got a little bit more to do in the film compared to the first one. But in terms of the new cast members put in, they're all pretty much okay. I particularly love Pedro Pascal, and in fact he was actually my highlight of the film in regards to performance and character. So I love seeing him in here and not having his eyes smashed out in his watermelon head. Just kablammy like it was when we last saw him in Game of Thrones. But all the other new cast members in the film don't really do a huge amount in the film other than just be there. We get people like Julianne fucking Moore, who is basically a saint of a woman, who should be incredible in everything she's in, just not being incredible in this film, which is just wrong. But whilst the cast on the whole is doing good work with their performances, it's actually a lot of fun to watch a lot of these guys doing their stuff on screen. It's everything else in the film which seems to let it down. It's not that there's anything horrendous and terrible in here, it's just that nothing ever really seems to amount to anything. And that is a massive shame to have to stand here to say, given that I'm such a huge fan of Vaughn's work in pretty much every film he's done so far. I've come to expect a lot of things from a Matthew Vaughn film, not least of those being just a fun time above everything else. It is just fun. And this one, it didn't even really do that for me. And that's all the more frustrating because there are clearly a lot of things in the film which absolutely should have worked and been incredible. Things that happen throughout different scenes where if you were to tell me that written down on a piece of paper before I'd seen a film, I'd be like, that is gonna, there's no way that cannot be gold. For instance, I guess this is kind of a spoiler, but everyone knows at this point, Elton John's in the film. And everything in regards to him in the film should have been amazing. But instead it just felt like a really forced cameo that overstayed its welcome. Every time something like that happened in screen, I was like, can we just get back to what we're meant to be doing here? But there's also like the crazy over-the-top fighting and the introduction of an American side of things with a statesman. All of these things should have really worked in the film, but it just didn't really. And I think it's because it does that thing where you nail something first time around and it feels naturally very exciting and fresh and edgy, and you're like, this is mental, I shouldn't love this, but I do. And then when you come to do it a second time and you start to kind of exploit the things that you think audiences love about your film, it almost always falls flat, and it's exactly what's happened here, I think. For example, the fight sequences throughout this film, they're exciting to watch, they're entertaining, they're pretty much serviceable fight scenes, but in the first one, when that big church sequence happened, it was like, this is insane, this is probably, arguably one of the best fight sequences I've seen in a long time in film. It's mental, I don't know how they pulled it off, it's wild. I love that fight sequence. Every time I watch that on screen, on a TV or on Blu-ray, I'm like, I've got to rewind it and watch it. It's so good. And it's the only real moment in the first one where they really hone in on this kind of, I don't know what it is, stitching together of shots, frantic camera movements that are really in your face. You're very aware of the way the camera is moving in that scene, but it absolutely works there because it is a church filled with hundreds of people attacking Colin Firth at once. There's no way to film that from a wide shot. The only way is to just get straight fucking in there and go for it. But in this one, every fight scene was filmed in that style, and it just felt like they were very clearly trying to recreate that style that worked so well in the church sequence and just put it throughout this whole film. Everyone will love it, it'll be amazing. It just didn't really work for me. It didn't feel necessary, other than the fact that that is a style which everyone can associate with that fight sequence. I don't think it's necessary when you've got two characters going at each other in a big open space. Just Just film it like a normal fight sequence. You don't need to be lobbing the camera around and stitching things together with weird CGI. And that is the most obvious case, I think, of many in the film, of taking something that they thought was what everyone loved about the first one and just doing it across the whole of this one and hoping that it pays off. But perhaps even more of a disappointment for me here was the kind of the plot, the story and the screenplay of this one, which to me, watching it, felt like a big old mess. Why bring back Colin Firth? I mean, I know why, because Colin Firth and Taron Egerton worked really well together alongside each other in the first one, but spoilers for the first one, Colin Firth died in that one, and it was a very well executed plot element in that one that took us all off guard, and I was very happy with that. And then this one, they're just like, well, we brought him back because we wrapped something around his head, and well, I'm not going to go into it. You can watch the film if you want to know, but it is ridiculous. Really, really fucking ridiculous. When I'm thinking about it through now, I'm like, why did anyone greenlight that idea? And I guess you could argue that clearly the intention here is for that to be a ridiculous way of bringing someone back, and maybe that's riffing off other films which do genuinely try and bring characters back in the most ridiculous way, but it doesn't really come off like that to me. It doesn't really work. It just feels like a very lazy attempt to get a character back from the first one, which you think people loved. We don't need him back. He doesn't actually do anything in this film that any other character could have done. And secondly, there's very odd detours in the storyline, particularly one sequence where they go to Glastonbury? Fucking Glastonbury Music Festival, which is in itself a bit odd to me. I don't know why. But then what they actually end up doing there is even more odd. Baffling to me even. In some way it could have worked if it had been executed well. But then at the same, I'm not even sure there is a good way to execute it. Just don't put it in the film. I don't think it's needed at all. Essentially I feel gross saying it. I don't want to say it. He fingers a girl to get a probe in her so they can track her. And actually that was exactly my face as I watched that entire 10-minute sequence. Even then building up to doing it, I'm like, what is this? But I mean, there's a world where this could have worked. It fucking worked in Austin Powers. She'd have put that probe up Fat Bastard's arsehole. That is golden. Okay? That is a golden scene in a comedic piss take of a spy film. But here it's just like, oh, you're gross. Could you not do that? And it's all these kind of weird plot detours and introduction of different kind of cameo people and different elements of the story which just don't really seem to mesh that well together. I mean, as a film overall, it didn't really flow for me. It was just a lot of odd, weird sequences happening together with the characters I know and love from the first one. It really just feels like the entire first half of this film seems to be some kind of long-winded excuse to get Colin Firth back, and then he's back, and the rest of the film is just trying to piece together all the shit they built up, which doesn't really seem to be going anywhere, and then it just sort of ends. I'm like, oh, I didn't need this. I just want to go and watch the first one again. I mean, it's not entirely bad. I really do sound like I'm taking a big fudgy shit all over this one, but I did enjoy a lot of things about it. I don't think it is necessarily an entirely terrible or bad film. I was entertained throughout it. I never felt bored once by it. And there were actually a couple of sequences which were effective and did what I think it wanted to be doing. Namely, some of the moments with Mark Strong. There's one near the end. I think you'll know what I mean when you've seen it. That was a very well executed scene. I liked that stuff. And there are actually a few scenes throughout where it worked. It felt like I was watching a good Matthew Vaughn film. But as a whole, something was just very off about this one. It had a lot of potential to be much more than just a big cameo vehicle action flick, which is essentially what it is at the end of the day. It could have been so good, but unfortunately it felt lazy, where the first one felt incredibly fresh. So I'm going to go ahead and give Kingsman: The Golden Circle a very, very low 3 stars. If I am given the option, I'm going to go ahead and watch the first one because it is a whole lot better than this one. But what about you guys? Are you in my boat where it didn't live up to any of the greatness of the first one? Or did you absolutely love it? Because I know a lot of people are in different boats here. So let me know what you thought about it in the comments below. I'd love to know. And as usual, if you like this review and you want to see me talk about more shit, please go ahead and click subscribe. But until next time, stay beautiful, mother truckers.